John McGowan, Gowan, was a typical Scottish emigrant in some ways. He left a hard land in the late 1800s for new chances in America. Born in 1865, he was the illegitimate grandson of a cotton weaver. He grew up in his grandfather's house, a weaver's cottage on Bell Street in Airdrie, Scotland. He was a few miles by train from Glasgow. He probably attended public school from age 5 to 13. He went to work right after that, assembling and repairing engines, maybe for a coal mining outfit. He was an apprentice engine fitter at age 16. John's grandfather, John McGowan, Gown, was born in 1806 on a dairy farm as life was shifting from the country to cities. It was a poor living. The young people especially were flocking to industry or leaving Scotland completely. For a Scottish commoner at the turn of the 19th century, the choices for work were often grim. Death and hunger were familiar. Life was controlled by landlords and bosses. Farm work was boring and poor. Mill work was brutal, and so were the coal mines. Other work was controlled by merchants who had a system of perpetual debt for their workers. There were repeated panics, and a person could lose their job and home for little reason. John was born near the great Paisley Abbey. Paisley was a weaving center, and John knew about silk and linen weaving. He probably helped weave linen at home as a child. He was born into a world in which hand-loom weaving seemed to be king. The work was clean and weavers were in demand, though too many workers made wages uncertain. Home weaving was better than working in a cotton mill. New mechanized looms were coming, but were adopted slowly. Avoiding the mines and the mills, John migrated across the Clyde Valley to Airdrie, another weaving center, and married Mary Curry, a weaver's illegitimate daughter, in 1831. Textile manufacture has two parts: creating the threads and making the fabric. When John was born, silk, linen, and wool were all in use, but slavery in the USA and new carding and spinning machines made cotton cheap, plentiful, and high quality. The holdup was the weavers. They seemed to be in the catbird seed. They resisted factories and continued to weave at home long after other industries collectivized. In 1830, John might have felt he could be master of his fate. A weaving cottage consisted of 2 rooms and housed 8 or more people. Sometimes there was a second floor for another family. One room was the workroom and shop, the other served for all else, though they might have cooked over an open fire in the back garden. Without electricity and modern windows, it was dark, and they were taxed on the number of windows, so they were few. In 2 rooms, John and Mary raised 4 boys and 2 girls. This modern weaver shows the size of the loom compared to the operator. John's main product was probably plain goods or sheeting, 1 over, 1 under plain weave muslin. Muslin was a common clothing fabric, as well as being used for household items. They sold to town warehouses, and they would have had contracts and quotas. The entire family was involved. Mary took her turn at the shuttle, as did the older children. Children, especially girls, did contract piecework, making muslin decorations and embroidering to order. Until the advent of power spinning in the 1780s, a daughter was often kept at home unmarried, the spinster. Life went on. There were the cotton panics, labor unrest, new mouths to feed. John must always have had an eye on the textile mills threatening his job and life. The cotton handloom industry peaked in 1830. John spent his life in an industry in decline, but he gradually took over 2 buildings and had several tenants. All of John and Mary's children lived to adulthood. They called the U.S. Civil War the Cotton Famine. At first, the war and blockade struck the cotton producers, but soon losing American cotton hurt the weavers. Even with cotton from Egypt and India, U.S. cotton was better. and the Scottish weaving industry was devastated. The handloom weavers never recovered. By 1881, John the Weaver was retired. His wife Mary died in 1878. Jane, John the emigrant's mother, and her family are living with both Johns on Bell Street, but weaving has left the family. Jane's brother was a machinist, a lath splitter, and her husband William and Sons were painters. Soon after that, John the Weaver passed. The family had enough money to announce it in the American papers to try to get word to Jane's sister Anne in Michigan. In 1885, John McGowan, the grandson, shipped out to join Anne and her family in Manistee. He was 19. He had his own family, and he died in Alabama in 1927 at age 61, working as a machinist for a railroad. Cotton weaving declined in the Glasgow area until 1968, when the last mills closed. The local self-help society was disbanded the same year. Scotland still produces fine fabrics and cloth goods, but the handloom weavers and their proud independent tradition are gone.